I like magic. Magic is fun. I like casting Firestorm in Skyrim and just making things explode. I like how immersive magic systems can be as you learn their complex mechanics along with the characters. I even like those tidy, iconic moments where magic always saves the day. The true love's kiss or wishing on a star that always results in a happily ever after. What can I say? I'm sentimental. But sometimes, often, actually, magic is...
And the more wishes you make, the more magnificent Fantasia will become.
I can't really articulate why, but something about these moments feels different from the other kinds of magic to me. They leave me with this very particular, very genuine sense of awe. It's an encounter with the numinous, something that makes the story feel so much bigger than itself. I've seen people describe this kind of magic in a lot of different ways. In D&D and some other places, I've seen it referred to as wild magic. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's called deeper magic from before the dawn of time. But I think the one term I see more than any other, the one people seem to congregate around intuitively, is real magic. Which, I mean, that's a really interesting thing to say, isn't it? In a story where magic exists, it's not like the other more predictable displays of magic aren't real. It's hard to say that Gandalf's fireworks and exploding pine cones aren't magic, right? It seems like a silly, pedantic thing to point out. But when he turns into Gandalf the White, I mean, that is different. Still magic, but I just can't compare it to pressing a button and shooting fireballs out of your hands or getting a broom to sweep the floor by itself. The word real, it resonates. I get it almost instantly, even if I have no idea what it actually means. What is it exactly that I'm feeling here? How can it be so unmistakable yet so hard to place? What is real magic? Okay, really quick, I need to tell you about something absolutely absurd that's happening right now. Like, right now, while you're watching this video. The humans behind this show, the ones who do all the art and technical stuff behind these videos, have decided that it's time for all of you to get to know me. They're working on a new body of content that they're calling The Lore of Tale Foundry, which I find funny because, to me, it's just snippets of my everyday life here in the Foundry. Look, over on our socials, I'm actually going to be explaining how my legs work. They also have some fun plans for cinematography. I guess they want to give me more screen time. They're even planning a tour of the Foundry itself. Right now, the team is trying to fund this project. If you're as excited as I am about it, visit thetalefoundry.com/lore and pledge to their campaign. If you do, I, Talebot, will send you a thank you card signed by me and the Taloids. And if you pledge for a year or more, I'll send you an actual piece of the Foundry. Just a little trinket for fun, something I pick out of the machinery. Again, visit thetalefoundry.com/lore to pledge. I won't lie, it's been a little strange just standing in as host for all these years. The Foundry is an interesting place, and I'm excited to finally start sharing it with you. Okay, this is actually going to be a pretty serious topic. I'm talking about magic, which means I'm also talking about belief. This is the sort of thing that's less the domain of fantasy writers and more the domain of philosophers, scientists, historians, theologians. So, because this subject is so complex and heavy and nuanced, I'm going to have to defer to a couple of experts.
Sometimes you just have to believe in things, even when you can't figure them out. I will not believe in anything I cannot explain.
Bear with me. I know how it looks. Yes, I am about to ask you to take My Little Pony seriously with me for a sec. I am about to do some analysis on it. But trust me on this one, okay? There's a reason for this. There's this one episode where the characters get into a debate that I really never expected from a show like this. In the episode Feeling Pinky Keen, Pinkie Pie claims that she has an uncontrollable psychic ability called Pinky Sense. Twilight doesn't believe her. There's no rational explanation here. It may very well be a series of random coincidences. It's weird, it seems supernatural, but according to Twilight, there's a serious difference between Pinky Sense and magic.
Magic is something you study and practice. It only happens when you decide to do it, and it's meant to make something specific that you choose to happen.
There's an obvious irony here. Twilight Sparkle is a unicorn. She practices magic on a regular basis, but that's all it is to her. Practice. To her credit, Pinkie Pie never tries to argue with Twilight's many attempts to debunk Pinky Sense. She doesn't really feel the need to. She's so secure in her belief, she's just not interested in proving herself.
Okie dokie dokie.
Toward the end of the episode, Twilight has to take a literal leap of faith. She has to believe, no matter how irrational it seems, that if she jumps across an impossible gap, she'll make it. And, this is My Little Pony, so she does. And then this happens.
I give up. I don't understand how, why, or what. But Pinky Sense somehow makes sense. I don't see how it does, but it just does. Just because I don't understand doesn't mean it's not true.
Okay, that's the My Little Pony part. I'm pointing to it because it's a really tidy crystallization of an argument I think we've all seen before. It's the classic debate between the skeptic and the believer. Usually we don't expect the skeptic to win. It's Seward versus Van Helsing and Dracula, or every single Christmas movie about believing in Santa. It's easy to see why this is a thing. If you're coming to a story to see magic, of course the belief in magic is going to be vindicated in the end. The true magic reveals itself, and all anyone can do is accept it. When it emerges, it is undeniable. Gilbert Norrell is the leading authority on English magic. He once brought an entire cathedral to life just to prove that magic exists. He has a library full of magical texts and knows everything there is to know about the great magicians of the past. And he has opinions. Where most other magic enthusiasts see an impressive collection of arcane literature, Norrell sees dated errors, falsehoods, practical flaws. He studies magic, but more than that, he critiques it. If there's one magician Norrell really hates, it's Vinculus, the street sorcerer. Norrell doesn't even think he counts as a magician at all. He thinks of Vinculus as a charlatan, performing card tricks and spouting absurd prophecies in the square. To Norrell, this isn't real magic. It's just showmanship, and not even good showmanship. This is one of the key points of thematic tension in the book Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Not necessarily the tension between Norrell and Vinculus specifically, but the tension between Norrell's desire for order, credulity, structure, against the reality of magic. I'll admit, the first time I read the book, I was on Norrell's side. I wanted magic to be reasonable. I didn't understand Vinculus, and I too felt he was just spouting a lot of nonsense and filler dialogue. I thought he was kind of a foil for the more serious magicians. But my second time reading it, you see, what Norrell and I, during my first reading, mistook for errant babbling and showmanship was actually legitimate prophecy. By the end of the book, it's revealed that Vinculus is an extremely powerful seer. He actually predicts most of the events of the book, prophecies you can see coming to fruition in real time if you look carefully. I adored this twist, but it also made me feel frustrated with Norrell for his refusal to even entertain the possibility of magic outside of his strict parameters of understanding, and frustrated with myself for going along with him. Looking back, his rebuke of Vinculus feels less like ego and more like fear. So, there's something really confusing about this whole conversation. In fiction, most magic you see is objectively real. I mean, you see it. It's described. It happens. In real life, things referred to as supernatural or magical, there's almost always room for doubt. The most magical thing in the world could happen, and I think there would always be someone somewhere out there who would call it a hoax. an unexplained quirk of physics. A mystery maybe, but not magic. I don't think the word real in this context refers to whether or not the thing exists. This isn't about whether it happened in the story, because it did. It's there. I think what we're seeing here is this idea of something so numinous, so wondrous, so moving, that even the harshest cynic would stop searching for a rationalization and call it magical. Real magic, these stories seem to say, is the kind that thwarts the skeptic, something unexplainable which they have no choice but to believe.
I've lived through many ages. Through the eyes of salmon, deer, and wolf. I have seen the Northman. I have seen suffering in the darkness.
Real magic proves its own existence, but there's something else it does. It works on its own accord. It arrives when and how it wants to. I think of eldritch gods whose power comes from their otherworldliness, fairies and elves with a deep, ancient connection to the earth, angels and demons with their own understanding of how the supernatural works. In fantasy, magic often feels more magical when it comes from somewhere else, often beyond reality, or at least what the characters conceive reality to be. According to Douglas Batchelor, host of the podcast What Magic Is This? And a magic practitioner of 23 years, this isn't just a fantasy trope. The idea of real magic coming from another time or place is deeply rooted in history. When we reached out to him about this topic, he said that everyone always thinks the true magic is somewhere else. And he had a lot to share about this. In our conversations, he talked about the old use case of necromancy, which historically was the practice of evoking angels, spirits, demons. Christians debated the legitimacy of this practice for several centuries and whether contacting demons counted as real magic at all. Then there was the pristine magic that some people in Victorian England believed in. They claimed it could summon guardian angels and came from ancient Egypt, although this wasn't actually based in Egyptian history or culture. Wicca is a modern religion founded in the 20th century. It syncretized elements of Greek, Germanic, and Celtic traditions, sometimes giving people the impression that it actually came from an ancient, mythical past. What people believe is real magic, Batchelor says, often depends on the culture they come from. If a tradition appears to be foreign, taboo, or ancient, it might appear more mysterious to someone unfamiliar with it. It could seem more magical, even if in reality it's just another way to think about the same world all humans share. The most powerful forms of magic that appear in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell are explicitly un-English. Vinculus has a legendary prophecy written directly onto his skin. But when Norrell, an expert on magic, sees this writing, he can't recognize it. In his words, it looks like the, quote, barbaric paintings of the skin by the natives of the South Sea Islands. He dismisses Vinculus's tricks and spells. This is not the sort of magic which civilized men wish to be seen practiced in England nowadays. Taking it a step further, the fairies in the book deride the very concept of English civilization. They turn manicured parks into twisted wildwoods and even have the power to erase skepticism from people's minds altogether. The most powerful moment of real magic in the entire book isn't performed by Norrell. This prophesied extraordinary power is channeled through a butler, descended from an enslaved African family. Near the end of the story, he momentarily commands all the land of England, and it listens to him. Not the civilization or the culture, but the land itself. Norrell believes in structure, reason, rationality. Meddling with fairies is taboo. He detests street sorcery. If any form of magic is improper to him, he refuses even to entertain it. He's unprepared for the challenges it poses to his disbelief, yes, but also, and perhaps more importantly, to the beliefs he does hold. I think this is the other half of the real magic puzzle. Yes, belief is a big part of it, but so is familiarity. I really like what Douglas had to say about this. To him, real magic isn't a question of what's real at all. It's a question of what's permissible and what people think should be a part of reality. For the most part, he told me, you'll find that real magic lies outside of what's allowed.
And I was told that there was a fakir, a holy man, up in the mountains. Anyway, cut a long story short, I went up to see him. It was a long climb up this hill, and there he was on a flat piece of ground with a sheer drop on the other side. And I had to go through a gully, and he knew I was there, and he said, what do you want? And I said, I hear you can do miracles. And he said, all right, okay, but you're far too materialistic, but anyway, I'll give you what you want. Look over the hills, my son. About 70. Look over the hills. I thought, I'd better pacify this silly old twit. I'm looking over the hills. He's standing here. And I think, that's funny. And I turn and he's not there. He's the other side of a stream rushing down. Now, I was a boxer in those days and very fit, and I couldn't have done it. And I thought, how'd you get there? Cunning old devil. Ropes? Hell, couldn't do it. I can't do it. And he's saying, look over the hills. And I'm look over the hills, and I thought, I'd better look over the hills. What? And then the voice says, well, my son, did that entertain you? And he's back to me. It shook me rigid.
Parapsychologist Tony Cornell was stationed in India during World War II. There, he claimed to witness something that changed his entire reality. A holy man with the ability to teleport. Cornell did remain skeptical of many paranormal occurrences and believed that many magical events could be disproven, but this single event proved to him, if nothing else, that there was more to the universe than he could understand. Real magic can feel real for a couple different reasons. It shatters skepticism, proving itself against all doubt, like in that My Little Pony episode. It exists outside of what someone allows themselves to believe, as it does in Strange and Normal. And often, maybe even most cases, it does both. It creates something more, an implication. Cornell's encounter with the teleporting man lasted only a few moments. The implications for his reality, those stayed with him forever. I keep coming back to this debate between the believer and the skeptic. It seems to show up in all these stories where real magic occurs. But there's one that does it a little differently.
And it's like someone has shouted a story at me that I do not believe.
Guess the question is, do these stories convince us of a lie? Or do they resonate with something deep inside us that's profoundly true? That we can't express any other way. Except storytelling.
Wake Up Dead Man, the third movie in the Knives Out series, is a murder mystery. A fact that is almost irrelevant to this conversation, because we aren't here to talk about murder or crime solving. We're here to talk about truth. Father Judd is a young priest trying to make a difference in the world. Benoit Blanc is a famous detective and a staunch atheist. All the usual dialogue ensues. But My Little Pony, this is not. The movie isn't interested in proving one character right or the other wrong. It's interested in another sort of truth. When Judd is accused of what appears to be a miraculous crime, Blanc's rationality comforts him. His skepticism helps Judd manage the intense emotional pressure he's under.
This was dressed as a miracle. It's just a murder. And I solve murders.
At the end of the film, Blanc is about to solve the case. He has all the pieces, he just needs to fit them together. But at the last second, he has a sudden revelation, what Judd calls a road to Damascus moment. He realizes that he's a detective for the same reason that Judd is a priest. Both are motivated by a desire to help others and to give them closure.
God is a fiction. My revelation came from Father Judd. His example, to have grace for my enemy. Grace for the broken, grace for those who deserve it the least, but who need it the most. For the guilty.
And so, Instead of the big reveal, instead of all the theatrics you'd expect from a detective movie, Blanc lets the culprit confess and ask for forgiveness. The road to Damascus moment serves the same narrative purpose as all those other moments of real magic and fantasy. It challenges Blanc's skepticism in the same way that Norrell and Twilight were challenged. It's a revelation of a truth. Blanc finds he believes in something just like Judd does. Not a god, maybe, but compassion, humanity, the necessity of storytelling. I think real magic feels real because it implies something beyond the magic itself. It often gives a small glimpse into the possibility that something unbelievable could be true. Real magic, in whatever form it takes, is a brush with another side of reality. Maybe that's why it's so easy to recognize as real.
I am happy to report that I now realize there are wonderful things in this world you just can't explain. But that doesn't necessarily make them any less true. It just means you have to choose to believe in them.
I wasn't kidding when I called her an expert. When I first started thinking about this, I began with the feeling. How I reacted to these moments of real magic versus all the other forms of magic I'd seen in fantasy. Explaining that feeling still feels kind of impossible, but let me try. I think the difference comes down to what's familiar, what we recognize and understand. We know tropes like true love's kiss. Magic systems provide a way for us to know how the magic works. We understand things that are supposed to happen in a fantasy story. Real magic doesn't feel familiar, no matter how many times we see it happen. It's the introduction of something new, a tiny piece of the story that changes our view of how its entire world works. Whenever people witness something phenomenal or wondrous or life-changing, how often do they call it magical? Real magic isn't actually some categorical difference between kinds of magic. I don't think there's a real argument that tells us exactly how, materially, Gandalf's transformation is more magical than his fireworks. Really, I think this is just language, grasping for a way to say something, for a way to say, without saying it, that my reality has changed. This is something that actually happens to me a lot while looking at art. Think about it. How long could you really stare at a painting, any painting, and feel as though, somehow, you still haven't seen all of it? Like what's on the canvas is just the tip of some vast cosmic iceberg. Art has this effect, I think. It speaks to you in ways you can't fully grasp. You can feel your reality changing, even though you don't know how. Here, look at this. This is Cethariel, Angel of Deception. See the way his face dissolves into smoke, how the shadows gather cold around him? This is Gadriel, Angel of War. See his alabaster form looming over the treetops, his exposed heart? Tamiel, Angel of the Unseen. Armoros, Angel of Undoing. Angels, all of them. But before that, art. Evocations of experiences every human has, thoughts you think, incarnations of truths you could never articulate. This is the world of Angelarium by artist Peter Moorbacher. He's designed a ton of these. They draw a lot of inspiration from religious texts, mythology, history, all reinterpreted into original concepts. There are 2 entire Angelarium books, and they're full of this stuff. The Book of Emanations and the Book of Watchers tell the stories of these angels, almost like a mythological compendium for this world. There's lore here, a whole angelic history, an alphabet, a language. I don't want to spoil anything because I really want you to see these for yourself. This is more than just an art project. For my money, it's one of the closest brushes with real magic a work of art has ever given me. Right now, both Angelarium books are on sale together for $85, which is already 15% off the original sticker price. But if you use code TALEFoundry20 at checkout, you'll also get an additional 20% off that price. So that's like $68 for 2 books? Honestly, if you want to own these, I think this is the cheapest way you'll ever get your hands on them. And that same code will also get you 20% off anything in the Angelarium shop, including angel-themed tarot decks, collectible art cards, angelic enamel pins, even playmats featuring full art of the angels themselves. I personally own the Gavira one, which I adore. Again, visit angelarium.shop and use code TaleFoundry20 to get an additional 20% off both books when you buy them together, or anything else in the Angelarium shop. Thanks again to Peter for sponsoring this one. It's always fun to be able to have art from a real artist that we know on the show like this. Go show him some support. He's been an amazing artist to work with. It's been a while since I did one of these magic videos, huh? I mean, I did the post-magical one a little while ago, but, that was more about the state of the world than it was about magic. It's tricky because the more I learn about magic, the less it feels like the fantasy magic I'm used to. It stops being a fictional thing alarmingly fast and spirals off into anthropology and culture and belief. Thanks for indulging me on this one. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. Maybe sometime soon we can get back to the more fictional side of magic. Who knows? Until then, keep making stuff up. Bye.